where he just sat down and told you all that good advice. And here's another fountain. And here's more of the ever beautiful Westchester hills and trees. Again, you're at General Foods, and this is a chat with Glendora. And you've just met the chairman of the executive committee of the General Foods Corporation.
And you can do that with that gadget?
Here you are, boys and girls, in the cafeteria. At General Foods. That's a tree that really has a bark. General Foods Corporation, Rybrook, New York. And the former president and chief executive officer and now vice chairman of the executive committee stopped all of his work so he could talk to you, how you could start such a career. Wouldn't you like to be the president and chief executive officer of a nice big company like that? Here is Mother Goose. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 goslings. One of them is named Chuck. Chuck Gosling. Now that's the mother-in-law and the father-in-law. This is a chat with Glendora, and we're at General Foods Corporation. And we're on our way out. I'm too young to be on my way out. And here comes Father, and I think Father wants me to lead. Okay, Daddy Goose. You're on site.
Meanwhile, the multitudes are hushed, and he has a conference with the pitcher. And then he takes the pitcher out and puts in a substitute. In our day, when we got into trouble, the manager would come out, and his conversation was short. He said, "Si, pitch your way out of trouble, which I regarded as a classic statement. When you get into trouble, believe in yourself and believe in the good Lord and pitch your way out of trouble. And every human being has something in him that can come out, but the pity is many people never release it. They never produce the amazing results of positive thinking. One of the greatest American principles is that under freedom and religion, any boy or girl, no matter what the circumstances, can rise to the stars. That's the great old American principle that's fascinated people for 200 years. So if you haven't succeeded, if you're plodding along, but you don't like what you are, start believing in yourself and believe in Jesus, who has the releasing power that nobody ever did possess. Now, you know, I was making a speech in California one time. Not a church service. It was a speech to a business convention. And I was laying it out along this line. And I was shaking hands with a few people afterwards. And I saw a beyond middle-aged woman standing there looking at me. I don't use the word elderly because it came out that she was of my generation. She was just beyond middle age. And she looked at me so intently that it got on my nerves. Finally, I said, "Ma'am, do you want to speak to me?" She said, "Hello, Norman." I said, "Do you know me?" She said, "Don't you know me?" And I always am honest, or try to be. And I said, "No, I don't really know you, though I did add, you look sort of familiar." She said, "I graduated from Bell Fountain, Ohio High School with you in 1916. I said, "What was your name then?" And she told me, and I said, "Mildred, of course I know you." And she said, "I haven't seen you since 1916. And she said, "I heard about you making speeches. And this is the first time I was ever able to hear you." Well, I said, "Have you got any reactions?" I shouldn't have asked her that question. She said, "All I got to say is you've done pretty well with what little you had to start with." Well, you know, I thought at first that was a big put-down. But then, upon reflection, I figured it was a sort of a compliment. If you have not very much to start with, and you think, and you believe, and you practice positive thinking, and you have faith in God, can do a lot with yourself. So that's the first thing. You can do a lot with yourself if you think and try and try and never stop trying. And the second thing is, figure out what you can do best and then do that thing. Get in harmony with the person who can bring out that best in you. Now, whatever the best is, and you do it well, you become what they call a genius. You become a great success in whatever that thing is. Now, let me illustrate it by saying that I had a brother, Leonard. He lived in a place called Venice, Florida. So I went down to see him one night. His wife, Josephine, is a terrific cook. And she specializes on breakfast. She gave us a typical down south breakfast at about 7:30 in the morning, because I had to get up to Tampa to take an airplane to someplace. And Leonard was going to drive me up. On the way up, he said, we're coming to a town. It isn't much of a town. It's a nondescript kind of place. But there's a restaurant in this town that attracts people from all over the state of Florida. I said, what's so unusual about the restaurant? He said, they have a pie baker in there. And she is without doubt the greatest pie baker in the United States. Well, I said, it's too bad we had a big breakfast. He said, it's now 10:15 and that breakfast has already been digested. He said, would you like to stop here and try a piece of this magnificent pie? Well, I said, I'm always avid for research. So we went into the restaurant at 10:15 in the morning, and it was with difficulty that we found a seat. But Leonard said, wait till you get the pie. So I said, what kind would you recommend? He said she only makes two kinds, apple and cherry. Well, I said, let's try our apple pie. Pretty soon it came out beautiful. Work of art, with a slab of New York cheddar cheese laid across the top. And we went to work on the pie, and I said, laid across the top. And we went to work on the pie, and I said, this is terrific. I never ate such pie in my life. Leonard said he didn't either. And he said, you ought to try our cherry pie. Well, I said, in the interest of research, let's try that. So we ordered a piece of cherry pie, and it was even better than the first pie. I said, then I've got to talk to this lady. She's got to be a positive thinker. So I said to the Florida cracker girl who was waiting on me, I said, could I meet the lady who made this pie? She said, what's stopping you? Go back in the kitchen. So I went back in the kitchen, and there were 4 women back there. 3 of them had blue dresses on, and 1 had a white dress, spotless. And I said, which of you ladies made that pie that I had? They all said, Mary over there. She's the one that made that wonderful pie. So I went over to Mary and I said, ma'am, I want to tell you something. I have been eating pie for quite a few years, all over the world. And I come from New York State, which is admittedly the best pie-making section in the United States. And I want to tell you that this is, by all odds, the greatest piece of pie I ever had in my life. You know what she said? That's what they all say. I said, how did you get into the pie-making business, and how many pies do you make every day? Well, she said, this morning I made 47. I said, what time did you have to get up to do that? She said, 4 a.m. You like it, eh? I said, I liked it. Well, she said, I wasn't amount to anything. And I read books like yours that told me I ought to be somebody. And I got to thinking one day. I got to thinking. That's the beginning of success. I got to thinking instead of complaining. And I asked myself, what can I do that's really good? And she said, I can make a pie. So she made a few pies, and she went down to the restaurant, and she sold herself. And I suppose she's still down there every day, contributing to the welfare of the citizens of the United States, though not to their waistline, by making this wonderful pie. And on the way out, she said, I want to say to you, sir, that I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. So I put it all together. She thought. She was a positive thinker. She believed. She tried. Plus, being a disciple of the Lord, she produced an amazing result of positive thinking. I'm looking at the faces of some of the most wonderful people in the world. And I say that without unduly complimenting you, because you're in church on Sunday. You look up to the Lord. You want to be all that you can be. Well, you've certainly come to the right place to get started on that marvelous adventure. And the third thing is to go to Him who can change you into a better person, a more competent person, a more doing person, the greatest expert in the world on human nature. If you're not succeeding, go to Him and have Him make you what you can be. And He will, too. You can be whatever you want to be, if. God bless you, everyone.
shooting of a federal judge. It happened this afternoon in Pelham. Officials say Justice Richard Duranko was suddenly attacked while mowing his lawn. Police say the gunman chased Duranko into his home and fired the fatal shots. Then he turned the gun on himself. The FBI is now investigating the case. Duranko was a judge in New York's Southern District. Officials say they have no idea who was behind the attack.
3 teenagers.
Anything can happen in New York.
Good evening. Jane Velez Mitchell is off tonight. John Slattery joins us. Police in Westchester County have a strange murder-suicide to handle tonight. A federal judge at home working in his garden was approached by a gunman this afternoon in Pelham. The man fired 3 shots, killing the judge. Then he turned the gun on himself.
First shot fired outside. The killer followed the judge into the house. The subsequent shot apparently fired inside the house, at which point the killer took his own life.
Federal District Court Judge Richard Duranko was working among the azaleas and hemlocks in his garden when death came. The gunman, a man in his 60s, apparently drove to the quiet neighborhood and walked to the garden with a .38 caliber pistol in hand. Police have not released the killer's name yet. They are looking to see if he was connected to a case Judge Duranko had handled.
We'll be going through state cases that he handled as a state Supreme Court judge to see whether or not some evidence of motive could come out of that.
There wasn't any situation where he was threatened by someone?
As I said, we can't comment at this time about threats, if any.
The judge had just been appointed to the federal bench last year, serving the Southern District of New York. He had been a Westchester Family Court judge, a state Supreme Court justice, and a state administrative judge before ascending to the federal bench.
I remember how excited he was last year when he got a call from President Reagan.
Mary Hurl had known Judge Duranko and his family for 25 years.
A very loving husband and father, always concerned about his children. There are 5 children. Full of good humor. A wonderful trumpet player.
He was a great guy, and it's just, I don't know, it's just really unfair that this happened to him. He was really on his way up, and he got stopped before anything could happen.
Judge Duranko's wife and daughter were at home when he was killed. He died in his study. His killer, a few feet away, ended the episode with a single shot to his own head.
It is a trap.
Computer checks later revealed that no such name surfaced in any of the judge's federal cases. Checks of the state cases would take longer. One theory was the gunman may have been someone the judge had sentenced in a trial. Pelham is a town of less than 6,000, and in the quiet and very affluent neighborhood where Judge Richard Duranko lived, most of the neighbors knew him.
He's a blessed man. I know the whole family, his mother and everybody. I work for them.
Any idea why someone would want to kill him?
I don't know. God Almighty.
And he was just one of the finest men I knew. And I thought he was just a hell of a guy.
I felt that this is a quiet suburban community and these things just don't happen here.
Paul Duranko is the judge's brother. He is also the town supervisor of Pelham. He was at the scene today, comforting the judge's wife, daughter, and mother. Understandably, he didn't want to talk to reporters. Judge Duranko had been on the federal bench just a short time, too short a time to be involved with any really controversial cases. Ironically, his first controversial trial was coming up. He had just been selected to preside over the trial of 2 police officers charged in the New York City Transit Police false arrest scandal. John Miller, News 4, Pelham.
And tonight, police investigating any connection between that alleged killer, Charles Coster, and cases Judge Duranko tried while he was the supervising judge of criminal court in Westchester. Carol?
Black Muslim.
Diego.
This is USA Tonight with Marvin Scott.
Good evening, everyone. An identification and a motive in the murder of federal judge Richard Duranko. He was shot to death yesterday outside his Pelham home, and tonight, as Colleen Hunt reports, the motive for the murder is linked to a case he once handled.
It was just 4 days ago that federal judge Richard Duranko decided on a case that had been in litigation for many years. It was a decision that cost him his life. The motive? Revenge. The FBI revealed tonight it was an enraged ex-New York City cop, furious about the judge's decision against his daughter in a civil suit, who tracked down the judge in the backyard of his home yesterday. Charles Coster shot the judge, and when the judge ran inside to escape, Coster followed. He pumped several bullets into Judge Duranko, then turned the gun on himself. The reason? Coster's daughter Carol Lee lost her sexual harassment lawsuit against her employer Chase Manhattan and a co-worker, Alan Ross.
After approximately 7 years of litigation and the assignment of this case to 3 different federal judges, the lawsuit, which involved charges of sexual harassment and salary discrimination, finally went to trial. On May 19, 1988, Judge Duranko issued a decision against Carol Lee Coster in this matter. The decision was mailed out from his office on May 19th.
This young neighbor of the judge was the last to see him before the gunman appeared.
I was riding down the street, and he was cleaning up his yard, and he goes, "How you doing, big guy?" And I just said hello back to him. It was about 30 seconds after I saw him when the shots were fired. And
you heard them?
Yes, I did. I was maybe 100 yards away.
Did you see anything?
No, I didn't. I just thought they were fireworks.
Charles Coster was tracked down by a library card he had in his wallet. He had traveled from Bath, Pennsylvania, where he most recently lived, to the affluent New York suburb of Pelham on his murder-suicide mission.
The family was totally consumed with this case, and it had become a crusade in their life. It was also believed that Charles Coster, who was a retired New York City police officer, had exhausted his life savings in pursuit of his daughter's litigation.
The FBI says that although Coster's wife and daughter also appeared to be totally consumed by the lawsuit, a suicide note Coster left behind stated he was acting completely alone on his death mission. But tonight the FBI is interviewing the pair. Judge Duranko was recently interviewed on a cable TV show and had this advice for young people who want to go into law.
If you wish to be a judge, I would think that you should attempt to have a great deal of patience, be able to listen to both sides of a controversy, and not jump to a conclusion.
The judge is survived by a wife and 5 children. In Pelham, New York, this is Colleen Hunt reporting.
Authorities in Illinois are still...
And Charles Kuralt for a rare look at Russia's long-hidden treasures, beginning Wednesday on the CBS Evening News.
This is CBS.
His daughter loses a case in court, and he guns down the judge. Coming up next, new details about the man who carried out a death sentence at the Pelham home of Judge Richard Duranko. And he is charged...
Monday at 6 and 11.
Now, Reggie Harris, Jane Velez-Mitchell, John Bolaris with weather, and Bob Goldschall with sports. This is Channel 2 News Sunday. Everything you need to know, because anything can happen in New York.
Good evening. Jane Velez-Mitchell is off tonight. Brian Williams joins us. There are new details tonight about the man who gunned down a federal judge as he worked in his Westchester garden. At an FBI news conference tonight, officials revealed that just 2 days before the killing, the gunman's daughter lost a major lawsuit. The judge presiding over the case, Judge Richard Duranko. Channel 2's Randall Pinkston has the latest.
Federal authorities say revenge was the motive. A retired New York City police officer, Charles Coster, the alleged murderer of U.S. District Judge Richard Duranko, gunned down outside his home Saturday afternoon in Pelham.
Was working in his lawn, mowing the lawn, working in his yard when he was accosted by Mr. Coster.
The FBI says Coster was apparently upset over Duranko's handling of a sex discrimination suit filed in 1981 by Coster's daughter, Carol Lee Coster, against Chase Manhattan Bank. The FBI says Judge Duranko was the 3rd federal jurist to handle Carol Lee Coster's discrimination suit against Chase Manhattan Bank. He ruled against her May 19th. 2 days later, her father parked his car near Judge Duranko's home, then walked up with a .38 caliber revolver, shooting the jurist and chasing him inside his house.
At the point when the assailant was satisfied that the judge was dead, turned the weapon on himself and commits suicide by inflicting a wound to his head.
The FBI says Coster retired from the New York City Police Department in 1969. A department spokesman said Coster was last assigned to the Mounted Unit. Authorities found a suicide note in his home in Bath, Pennsylvania.
The suicide note indicates strong displeasure with the judge's decision. It also indicates that Charles Coster acted alone.
Coster's wife and daughter were also questioned by federal authorities, but no charges have been filed. The 56-year-old Duranko was survived by his wife and 5 children and a host of relatives, including his brother Paul, the Pelham town supervisor. One of the slain juror's sons read a statement from the family.
His family is all together and deeply mourning their loss. We wish to thank the many friends that have shown their grief and support.
The family's main request is that they be left to mourn the passing of their loved one in seclusion. Thank you.
Funeral services are scheduled for Wednesday. In Pelham, Randall Pinkston, Channel 2 News.
Also tonight, the county community tries to recover from the murder of a federal judge. We have reaction tonight, including a report from Bath, Pennsylvania, the town where the gunman lived. This man is convinced that the
Witness News with Bill Butel and John Johnson. Corey McFerrin has sports. Storm Field with weather. And the Eyewitness News team. Now, Eyewitness News.
Good evening. His staff asked federal judge Richard Duranko over and over again to take his phone number and his address out of the Westchester County phone book. But he said it's fate. If they really want you, they'll find you. Charles Coster really wanted him and found him tending his garden in Pelham. Coster shot and killed him and killed himself. We know the motive Saturday afternoon was a kind of revenge. But Lewis Young reports money, too, might have had a role in this murder-suicide.
They're living a sad bit of history in Pelham tonight, preparing for the funeral of a federal judge, Judge Richard Duranko, only the second federal judge to be murdered in the last 100 years. The 56-year-old judge was shot and killed Saturday here by a man who disagreed with one of his rulings. Shot and killed by a former city police officer who felt his daughter's lawsuit against a former employer entitled her to millions in damages. The judge dismissed the case and died for it.
One of the things we're concerned about is that people would think that they can take that kind of assault on the law itself and those who are charged with responsibility.